When Arnold Schwarzenegger said, "Hasta la vista, baby," no one thought he was talking about the Terminator franchise. Because ever since T2, it's never been the same. From reboots to recasts, it feels as if the Terminator, well, terminated itself. Let's look at where this beloved franchise went wrong. Clothes, boots, motorcycles, and glory. When it comes to sci-fi action, the Terminator kicked the door in and changed the rules upon its release. Not only did it blow the audience and industry away with its revolutionary special effects and thrilling time-traveling storyline, but it also turned a certain Arnold Schwarzenegger into one of the biggest megastars that Hollywood has ever seen. But whatever success the first film had was totally eclipsed by its sequel, Judgment Day, proving that sequelitis is merely a myth and an excuse used by incompetent filmmakers. It topped everything that came before it. Bigger action, more impressive visual effects, iconic one-liners.
Hasta la vista, baby.
A story that influenced pop culture, and a box office juggernaut quite like anything else before it. Seriously, this movie had it all and then some. The accolades didn't end there, as Terminator 2 received several Oscars and was even the highest-grossing action film of all time, until The Matrix Reloaded toppled it over a decade later. To this day, it's considered one of the best films of all time, and you'll struggle to find someone who will disagree with that sentiment. It was a winning formula on all fronts, and many expected it to be repeated for years to come. Even James Cameron knew it, saying there would be economic pressure with the numbers it did to dive into yet another sequel. But then, the third film didn't arrive as quickly as anticipated. Instead, it took over a decade to finally be released. But it wasn't just the time frame that was concerning, but everything else happening behind the scenes. No Cameron, no party. Technically, Jim did return to the director's chair as he created the T2 3D Battle Across Time attraction for Universal. Amazingly, it cost a whopping $24 million to produce the 12-minute short film because of all the tech used at the time. At the same time, ideas for a full-fledged sequel were percolating in Jim's head. But there was another problem that caused a major roadblock to any development. A sticky little thing called movie rights. The story is complex and spans several years, but the crux is this. Carolco Pictures held the rights to Terminator and filed for bankruptcy in '95. A bidding war started, with Jim favoring 20th Century Fox and agreeing a deal in principle with the studio to do a third movie. However, Fox had the deal pulled out from under its nose by the very founders of Carolco, who'd formed a new film company and bid for Terminator after finding out the confidential news that it was still up for option from Jim himself. Distraught by what he perceived as deception, Jim refused to participate in the movie, though giving his blessing to Arnold to continue without him. No matter how many times he was asked to return, Jim refused, saying he can't direct a story written by someone else about characters he created.
Talk to the hand.
Eventually, Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines was released in theaters. While it was successful at the box office and generally received good reviews, it was certainly no T2. Plus, it only had Arnold from the original cast returning, which wasn't enough for some fans who wanted more. Turns out that was about to change too. Hasta la vista, Arnold. While the follow-up to Terminator 3 didn't take another decade to materialize, it wasn't without its drama either. A new feud between the producers resulted in the film rights being thrown up into the air again, and the fourth film being delayed for a few more years. And by that time, Arnold was the governor of California and unavailable for the shoot, though he did give his consent to have his likeness featured in the film. But Terminator Salvation wasn't true to its name. Instead, it became the first Terminator film to receive a critical and fan drubbing. No one was happy that the parts had been recast once again, nor the fact that Arnold was missing from the film. Despite Terminator being the story of John Connor, Salvation proved that the franchise was nothing without its biggest star, and undoubtedly the face of it. It also didn't help that the lead star Christian Bale was recorded having a meltdown about the director of photography walking on set during a scene. Instead of being remembered as a blockbuster about the battle between man and machine, the film is fondly remembered for Christian's outburst and the resulting memes. Honestly, can you even remember anything about the movie's storyline without Googling it? Salvation was meant to kickstart a new trilogy of films. But after its lackluster reception and some more turmoil about its rights, yes, seriously, plans took another turn. Something that's become a recurring theme in this franchise's history. A soft reboot. Most people remember Genisys for the weird spelling that gave English teachers heart attacks around the world. Under the vision of a new production company for what felt like the millionth time, this was meant to be a back-to-basics approach and reimagining of the original story. A Genisys.
Nice to see you.
And the producers even consulted with characters. Naturally, the hype was through the roof for this and fan thrashing. Most people thought it was worse than everything that came before it, even Salvation. Funny enough, Jim retracted his praise for the feature in future interviews, saying, "I think it's fairly widely known that I don't have a lot of respect for the films that were made later." He added that he only said good things about Genisys because Arnold is a close friend and he wanted to support him. Yikes! With all angles tried and tested, it seemed like no one could get Terminator right. No one except Jim. And guess what? He was about to board the franchise one more time. Hooray, right? The Return of the King. When director Tim Miller was handed the keys to the Terminator Kingdom in Dark Fate, he made one request. James Cameron was to return and help oversee it. He believed that only Jim could steer the ship back in the right direction. As a producer and writer on the film, Jim was intrigued by how this story would serve as a direct sequel to the films he had done before, ignoring everything else that came after him. But he also made his own special request. Arnold was to return, and plans for new characters in the series needed to be done via a smoother transition. In fact, these plans spanned across a new trilogy of movies. Ironically, Dark Fate was better received by fans and critics than its predecessors, but it made significantly less money at the box office. Again, most people felt it didn't quite live up to the bar of the first two films. Tim also wasn't happy about how he lost creative control of the movie to Jim at every turn, with the famed filmmaker criticizing even some of his dialogue choices. Suddenly, the Terminator franchise found itself in the familiar turmoil that plagued it for so long, even though it appeared to have all the right ingredients to rediscover its heyday. If Jim, Arnold, and even Linda Hamilton couldn't save Terminator, who could? Or was the audience just not interested in the man versus machine concept anymore? The end of Terminator films? After Dark Fate's less than stellar box office receipts, all plans for future films were put on ice.
You're not sending me to the corner.
Sorry folks, they just aren't happening. Even Mackenzie Davis agreed with the decision, telling NME, "I really love the movie and I'm so proud of what we did, but there wasn't a demand for it, and to think that there'd be a demand for a seventh film is quite insane. You should just pay attention to what audiences want." Mackenzie added that she believes people want new stories, and that's what filmmakers should focus on, rather than invest in a franchise that people aren't interested in anymore. It's a controversial statement, but it probably holds a lot of truth here. After so many films, multiple timelines, and the endless drama behind the scenes, Terminator has lost its shine and appeal. Most fans don't even know what's canon anymore. That doesn't mean the franchise is disappearing though, as Netflix recently announced a brand new Terminator anime series that's in the works.
Captain Fantastic.
It isn't quite a new film, but it's perhaps the best idea for the current moment. But the question is, will we ever see another Terminator film that matches the success of T1 and T2 on screen? More importantly, will he be back? Die-hard fans wonder if Arnold will get yet another chance to reprise his iconic role. But while we should always believe him when he says he'll be back, maybe this time it might be best if he doesn't. With Dark Fate, the original plan was to move away from the John Connor storyline and allow new characters to become the central focus of the Terminator series going forward. Unfortunately, nostalgia won the battle on that occasion, and until the franchise sheds its old skin, it may struggle to shake off the baggage of its past. Yes, Terminator will always be remembered as Arnold's franchise, and for good reason too, but it might be time to hit the full reboot button on it. Either start off completely fresh or explore different characters in this universe. It might prove to be a controversial decision in the beginning, however, it could be the franchise's last hope to stay relevant. At the end of the day, the Terminator's legacy deserves to go out with a bang, not a whimper. Right now, it's feeling like...
Hasta la vista, baby.